If you're looking to access the Oil Sands Monitoring Program data portal or catalog, you can begin by typing in Oil Sands Monitoring Program into your web browser, or you can use this URL directly to get to the alberta.ca Oil Sands Monitoring Program homepage. From here, you can click Scientific Papers and Data, and if you scroll down, you'll see three different links. The first link is for the OSM Data Catalog, the second link is for the OSM Data Portal or Data Viewer, and the last link is for the RAMP Data website. Here, I'd like to focus on the first two links, beginning with the OSM Data Portal or Data Viewer. So the information and data that I'm about to show here are hosted on the OSM Kisters database, and this portal is essentially the public-facing front end of that database. The purpose of this front end is to show monitoring coverage and allow users to quickly view and interact with the data that are available. So here we see a map with different symbols on the map, and each of these symbols essentially represents a station on the landscape where monitoring is conducted. The symbology is described in the legend at the bottom right corner. And the stations that we see here, of which there are 467 at the moment, can be filtered using the drop-down menus on the left-hand side. So we can filter by theme, site name, station parameter name, or a combination thereof. So for example, I'll select surface water here and filter for stations on the Muskeg River, of which there are 10. At this point, I can add an additional filter for parameters by clicking the boxes of interest. If I don't want to scroll through there, I can also search by typing in here. For example, I'll just click dissolved mercury. So there are 9 different stations meeting the criteria that we've set here. So if I clear that out, the other way that I can filter for stations is by using the Elasticsearch in the top right corner. Here I can type in keywords like Muskeg, for example, or groundwater. And as you can see, the map is refreshed depending on the search you put in. If you know the station name or number, you can also type that in here to find a specific station. The other thing I like to point out is the export button at the top right corner. So this export button allows you to export station information pertaining to the stations that you see on the map. So if I click it now, I'll get station information relevant to all 467 stations. But if I want just a subset, then I could refine the search and then select export. And I will have an export of the 45 air stations that we searched for. So you can see that here, 46 rows if we include the header. And the pieces of information we get include station name, station number, object type, which in this case is the theme, station latitude, and station longitude. So I'll just close that out. And I'll clear out the filter here. The other thing we can do is instead of looking at a map view, we can look at the stations in a table format. And again, the filters will work the same way. So for example, I could click groundwater here and I'll get the 120 groundwater stations that exist. From this point, I could go into one of the groundwater stations by clicking this icon here. And here I'll see the time series data that are pertinent to the station. The other thing I can do is I can select a set of stations from this list. I'll just select 3 for an example here. And I can click the Show Only Selection button, which will show me the 3 that I selected. And from here, I can click Time Series, which will show me all of the different time series available at the 3 different stations that I selected. So this is useful for when you want to compare data time series data spanning multiple stations. So for example, I'll just click a couple different time series, or a few different time series from the 3 stations, and I can press graph. And here I can view, in this case, groundwater level time series from 3 different stations in one graph. And to select the temporal range, you can click the pre-built buttons at the top for 3 days, 10 days, 1 month, 3 month, 1 year, or the entire extent, which I've selected here. You can also define the temporal range using these 2 fields at the top right corner. And at the bottom, you'll see a legend for the different time series that are shown on the graph. In this case, there's only one parameter, so there's only one y-axis. But if there were multiple parameters, then those would be shown on the left and right-hand sides of the graph. The green bar at the bottom shows the time series quality codes, if there are any. In this case, it's telling us that it's sensor data. And there are 3 other buttons that are of importance here. This one here is a configuration button, which allows you to toggle on and off different elements. The next button over is a show/hide data table, which essentially shows the same data in a tabulated format on the right-hand side. And the other button here is for downloading the data. So if I want to download the data, I could click this button here. There are a few different formats available to me, including a PNG of the graph itself. So I'll just go back to the map view and clear the selection. And as I said, you can type in a specific station of interest. In this case, I'm going to look for AB07, DA0610, just to show some more data. So at this point, I click the station on the map, and I have 2 different tabs available to me. One says real time, the other says samples. Samples are essentially discrete data. These are lab data. The real time, which is actually mislabeled, should say time series. These are time series data from continuously monitored parameters collected by different instruments that have been deployed in the field. So in this case, we're talking about surface water quality. So these are SON time series data. And when you're within one station, you can select up to 5 different time series to graph. So I'll just show an example of this here. And I can press graph. Much like before, we have pre-built buttons for selecting temporal range at the top. I'll click the full extent again. And at the bottom, you'll see the different symbols representing the different time series. And as I said, the y-axis, since we have multiple time series parameters selected, we've got y-axis on the right-hand side and y-axis on the left-hand side. Again, there's a configuration button for toggling on and off remarks. There's a button for the table. And there is a button for downloading the data. So that deals with time series data. Now, if I switch over to the sample data, or the discrete measurements, I can again click multiple parameters here and graph a few parameters of interest. So perhaps we'll just select a few at random here: dissolved calcium, fluoranthene, and let's go with oxygenating in water. I'll just press graph. Again, up to 5 parameters can be selected. And this graph will be much like before, but instead of time series data, we have discrete data points. The different colors represent different methods that were used to measure the different parameters that I selected. And again, we have a few different y-axes because we've selected a few different parameters. Here you can download the data in CSV format or the graph in PNG format. And I can toggle over to the table view to view the same data in tabular format. Here you can customize the table a little bit, select or deselect elements depending on what you're interested in. So that's how you would view data from one station. We looked at both discrete and continuous data. We also looked at how we could access time series data from multiple stations using the table view. So as I said, this portal, the function of this portal is to provide a means for users to see, to view and interact with subsets of data. It does not allow for downloading large amounts of data at one time. The tool that should be used for accessing bulk data is the OSM data catalog, which I can flip over to now. So here's the link for the catalog. Here we have a few different ways to navigate the catalog. You can click data sets and see the different data sets that are available. Currently there are 733. You can go by organization. You can go by group. And you can also search in the top right corner. So for example, I can type in water quality and see any assets that are related to the search that I put in there. So for example, I'll just click surface water quality discrete here. And these are export packages that have been pre-built from the Kisters database and put into the catalog for on-demand, ad hoc, kind of self-serving use. To download one of these data sets, I can click on the asset itself and click download. This will give me a zip folder containing the ABS 240 data in this case. The different measuring programs are described here in the metadata field. And this is just showing one example here, but the same thing can be done for other types of data. So I can go over and type in wetland data, for example, and see the different assets that are relevant to that keyword. And similar to before, I can click one of these assets, press Explore, Preview, or Download, and you can get that data downloaded to your computer for offline use. Just open that up to show an example. So this is how you would use the data catalog. Here's the example of the file that I downloaded for wetland data. And if the data set you're looking for isn't available here, then you can always contact the OSM Data Services team at aep.osmdatainquiries@gov.ab.ca, and they will be happy to help you get the data that you need.